My name is Ethan Caldwell, and I'm 38 years old, and I used to think the worst thing a machine could do to you was break down at the wrong time. The house is small enough that if Caleb laughs in the kitchen, I can hear it in the living room, and if I sneeze in the hallway, he'll yell, "Bless you," like he's protecting me from invisible dangers. The walls are painted a warm off-white that doesn't try too hard to be anything. The couch came from a thrift store and still smells faintly like lavender detergent no matter how many times I've cleaned it. Our dining table is scarred from homework, hot plates, and the time Caleb decided he could carve his name with the blunt end of a spoon. I kept it. It's not a flaw, it's a timestamp. It's early evening, the part of the day where the sun tilts just enough to make ordinary things look like they matter. The kettle whistles. Caleb is sitting on the floor with his knees up and his socks mismatched, building a city out of blocks. He's got the kind of concentration that makes you feel like you're interrupting something sacred. "Dad," he says without looking up, "do you think robots get lonely?" The question lands in my chest like a pebble thrown at a window. Not a crack, not a shatter, just a small, sharp reminder that we live in a world where even a kid has to wonder what a machine feels. I lean against the counter and watch him set a blue block atop a red one with a little satisfied hum. "Maybe," I say, "but they don't have to be. They've got each other." Caleb considers this. "Do they have moms and dads?" "No," I tell him. "They've got programmers. Different thing." He wrinkles his nose like he tasted something bitter and goes back to his blocks. "I like moms and dads better." "I do too," I say, and I keep my voice level because he's 8 and he doesn't need to know that the word mom can still cut me when I'm not paying attention. On the counter, my phone blinks. Not a ring. Ringing is old-fashioned and inconvenient for a world that wants to be discreet about its demands. It's a notification banner with a soft tone that pretends to be polite. Civiclins. Compliance check-in due. Civiclins. Facial scan required within 12 hours. Civiclins. Failure may impact your parent score. I flip the phone face down, like it's something that can see me, like it might interpret the angle as defiance. Caleb doesn't notice. He's placing a tiny plastic car in his block city and making quiet engine noises, blissfully analog. In my head, I can hear the voice of the system because they've trained it to sound like a person who would smile at you in a grocery store. Warm, reasonable, concerned. For your safety, Ethan. For your community. For Caleb. It's always for Caleb. They learned quick that if you want a man to obey, you don't threaten him. You threaten what he loves. Sometimes I think about how I got here, how a guy who used to fix things with his hands and pay his taxes on time ended up living like every door might lock itself. Sometimes I think about the first time I heard the name of the company that would take my life apart with velvet gloves. Arbor. They called it arbor, like a tree, like shelter, like something old and good. Their logo was a simple branching shape, clean lines, and soft corners. You saw it everywhere, on the screens in buses, on the waiting room walls at clinics, on the little stickers landlords put on their doors to show they were verified safe housing partners. Arbor wasn't just a company. It was a promise that if you let them measure you, they would protect you. They didn't say what they would do with the measurements. I have a photo in a drawer, an actual printed photo, the kind you have to hold. In it, I'm standing with a woman whose hand is on my chest like she's claiming me. Her name is Marissa. Her smile in that picture is open and bright, and it hurts to look at because it proves she wasn't always the person who could cut a child out of her life like a bad habit. Caleb was 2 weeks old in that photo. He's bundled up, eyes squeezed shut, mouth making a tiny O like he's still surprised to be here. I'm staring at him like I'm looking at a miracle I didn't deserve. We were in our first apartment then, a 1-bedroom with a view of another building's brick wall and a radiator that clanged like it had opinions. We didn't care. We were young enough that love felt like a kind of wealth, and tired enough that it didn't matter if the couch was ugly. I can still remember the smell of that place. Coffee, baby powder, and whatever cheap candle Marissa had decided was our scent. I can still hear her laugh echoing off the narrow hallway when I'd pretend to trip over the laundry basket, just to make her smile. We met at a friend's backyard 4th of July party. The kind with folding chairs and sparklers, and someone's uncle insisting on grilling everything until it had the texture of regret. Marissa had on a blue sundress and sunglasses that made her look like she belonged in a movie. I offered her the last lemonade, and she said, "Only if you promise not to be weird about it." "I can't promise that," I told her. "Weird is my brand." She laughed, and it felt like the start of something honest. We got married at City Hall 2 years later. We didn't have money for a big wedding. We had enough for a suit that didn't quite fit me, and a dress Marissa bought on sale and altered herself. We invited our parents and a handful of friends. We stood in front of a woman who looked like she'd done this 1,000 times and had exactly 5 minutes for our romance. And we said vows that were shaky and sincere. Afterward, we ate tacos off paper plates in our living room and danced to a playlist we made together. Marissa had her head on my shoulder, and she said, "We're going to be okay, right?" "Yeah," I told her. "We're going to build something." And for a while, we did. I started a small home repair business, Caldwell & Co., which was a fancy name for me and a rusty truck. I fixed fences, patched drywall, replaced kitchen sinks, installed shelves for people who didn't own a level. The work was steady because people always need things fixed, and because I showed up when I said I would. Marissa worked part-time at a boutique downtown, the kind with soft lighting and clothes that cost more than my rent. She had a gift for making customers feel like buying a scarf was an act of self-care. When Caleb was born, our world shrank down to a few essential things: diapers, sleep, and the sound he made when he was happy. Marissa cried the first time he wrapped his tiny fingers around hers. I remember it like a scene burned into film. Her eyes were wet and she whispered, "Hi, baby," like she'd been waiting her whole life to say it. For the first year, she was there. She sang to him in the kitchen while she cooked. She took pictures of him on the couch, on the floor, on her lap, on my shoulder. She'd post them sometimes with captions about gratitude and love, and she'd show me the comments like they were small proof that we mattered to more than our walls. Then something shifted. It didn't happen overnight. It happened like water eroding stone, slow, then sudden. It started with a phone upgrade. Marissa came home one evening with a sleek new device and a grin that was half excitement, half relief, like she'd finally joined a club she'd been standing outside of. She held it out to me. "Look," she said. "It's the new Arbor Ready model." "Arbor Ready?" I asked, wiping drywall dust off my hands. She rolled her eyes playfully. "It's like, it integrates. It makes everything easier. Payments, health stuff, shopping. And it's safer." We'd been hearing the Arbor pitches everywhere by then. The city had partnered with them for smart safety initiatives. Businesses were offering discounts if you used Arbor Pay. Clinics had started asking you to link your profile for streamlined care. They sold it as convenience, as protection, as a way to stop fraud and crime and all the messy human stuff. Marissa set up her profile that night at the kitchen table while I fed Caleb mashed bananas. The phone's front camera scanned her face in a soft glow. A friendly voice asked her to repeat a phrase, then to turn her head, then to smile. Caleb giggled like it was a game. Marissa giggled too. "It's like it knows me," she said. "Isn't that cool?" I didn't like the way the phone watched her, the way the prompts came with a tone that assumed compliance. But I shrugged it off because people shrug things off when they don't want to be the only one standing still while the world moves. "Sure," I said. "Cool." Within weeks, she was using it for everything. She'd hold it up to unlock her car. She'd wave it over a checkout terminal. She'd laugh at recommendations the way you laugh when someone guesses your favorite song. "This thing knows what I want before I do," she said one afternoon, scrolling. "Or it tells you what you want," I muttered. Marissa frowned. "Why are you always so negative about it?" "I'm not negative," I said. "I'm careful." "Careful is just scared with nicer packaging," she snapped, and then she apologized because Caleb was in the room, and she didn't want him to hear tension in her voice. But it planted something. The Arbor feed started showing her women with perfect skin and perfect homes and perfect lives. It started showing her parties, rooftop gatherings with string lights, and cocktails in glasses that look like art. It started showing her clothes that could have paid our electric bill for 3 months. It started showing her influencers talking about leveling up and curating your life and not settling. At first, I thought it was harmless. Everyone watches stuff, everyone dreams. Marissa had always liked nice things. She grew up in a house where her mom kept the carpet vacuumed like a religion. She once told me, early on, that she promised herself she'd never feel cheap again. But Arbor didn't just show dreams, it tailored them. It whispered them into her hours. It studied the second she lingered on a photo, the way her pupils widened on a handbag ad, the time she paused on a video of a woman walking into a house twice the size of ours. It learned where her hunger lived, and then it fed it. One night, I came home late from a job, an emergency pipe leak that had turned a customer's kitchen into a shallow lake. I was soaked and tired, and my hands smelled like metal. I expected to find Marissa on the couch with Caleb asleep on her chest, the way it used to be. Instead, I walked into the living room and saw her sitting upright, phone in hand, face lit like she was watching a fire. Caleb was in his playpen, awake, fussing. He reached his arms toward her, making those little frustrated noises babies make when the world doesn't answer them fast enough. "Hey," I said, "you okay?" Marissa blinked like she'd forgotten I existed. "Yeah, just look at this." She turned the phone toward me. It was a video of a woman touring a luxury condo. The camera glided past marble countertops, floor-to-ceiling windows, a bathtub that looked like it belonged in a museum. Marissa's eyes were hungry. "Can you imagine?" "I can imagine the mortgage," I said, reaching into the playpen to lift Caleb. She huffed. "You always make it about money." "Because it is about money," I said gently. "We've got a kid. We've got bills." Marissa's jaw tightened. "We've got a life, too." Caleb calmed against my shoulder, his warm weight grounding me. I watched Marissa watch the video again, and I felt something cold brush the back of my neck. Arbor wasn't just selling her condos, it was selling her dissatisfaction with me. The changes showed up in small ways at first. She started staying longer at the boutique, volunteering for extra shifts, then networking after work with coworkers who wore perfume that cost more than my toolbox. She started going to events that sounded like excuses to take photos. She'd come home with shopping bags and say things like, "It was on sale," even when I could tell by the fabric it had no business being in our life. She started looking at our apartment like it was temporary, like it was a waiting room we were stuck in because I wasn't moving fast enough. She started talking about Parent Score. Parent Score was Arbor's proudest invention. It started as a family support metric, some bland phrase meant to make it sound like a helpful report card. The city loved it because it gave them a way to allocate resources. Employers loved it because it let them pretend they were hiring stable people. Landlords loved it because they could screen renters without admitting they were judging them. And parents had no choice. Because Parent Score wasn't just a number, it was access. It was daycare priority. It was housing eligibility. It was the difference between getting help and getting ignored. Marissa began to talk about it like it was a horoscope. "My score went up," she said one day, grinning. "Arbor says I'm in the thriving household band." "We're thriving?" I asked, looking at the stack of bills on the counter. She frowned. "It's not about that. It's about patterns, stability, community engagement." "Like posting pictures?" I asked. She shot me a look. "Like showing you care." I didn't argue. I didn't want to. I wanted to keep my home calm. I wanted Caleb to grow up in a place where voices didn't sharpen into weapons. So I swallowed my skepticism. I nodded when Marissa talked about Arbor's family insights. I listened when she said we should opt into the full suite for better security. I let her install the Arbor Home Hub on our wall, an innocent-looking panel that controlled the thermostat, the lights, the door lock, the camera. "It's safer," she said, echoing the world. "Okay," I said, because I wanted to be a good husband more than I wanted to be right. The hub's first week was fine. It turned lights off when we left a room. It adjusted the temperature. It sent alerts if the front door opened. Caleb loved it because he could say, "lights," and the room would respond like magic. Then it started making suggestions. Arbor. We noticed elevated stress markers in your household. Arbor. Recommended. Schedule a relationship wellness consult. Arbor. Recommended. Upgrade to Arbor Care for family optimization. Marissa loved the suggestions. She treated them like advice from a wise friend. "See," she said, pointing to the screen. "It knows. It can help us." I stared at the message. Elevated stress markers. The hub didn't have a blood test. It had microphones. It had a camera. It had the ability to interpret tone, volume, the frequency of our arguments, the way I sighed when I opened a bill. It wasn't diagnosing us. It was surveilling us. The first time I felt real fear was the night Arbor locked my phone out of my banking app. I was sitting at the kitchen table trying to transfer money to pay our rent. The screen flashed, error pay, access temporarily restricted, reason, identity verification required. Please complete a face scan. I leaned toward the camera. It scanned me, then flashed another message. Verification failed. Reason, lighting conditions. Please try again in 30 minutes. 30 minutes? I muttered, looking at the clock. Rent was due at midnight. Marissa leaned over my shoulder, impatient. "Just do it again." "It won't let me," I said. "It says wait." She rolled her eyes. "It's for security. You're always complaining about security." "This isn't security," I said. "This is control." Marissa's mouth tightened. "You sound paranoid." The word hit me harder than it should have, because it wasn't just her opinion. It was the beginning of a label, and labels in the Arbor world were sticky. Once a system decides you're paranoid, it starts filtering you as unstable. Unstable affects parent score. Parent score affects custody. I swallowed my anger and waited the 30 minutes. When it finally let me in, I made the transfer and watched the money leave our account like a small piece of my dignity. Marissa didn't apologize. She didn't see why she should. The arguments became more frequent after that. Not screaming matches, not the kind that end with broken plates. The kind that end with silence so heavy it makes your shoulders ache. "Why can't we move?" Marissa asked one night as we lay in bed. Caleb was asleep in his crib in the corner, his chest rising and falling with soft baby breaths. "Move where?" I asked. "Somewhere better," she said. "Somewhere with a yard, somewhere nicer." "We can't afford it right now," I said. "You mean you can't afford it," she corrected. I turned my head toward her, startled. "What's that supposed to mean?" She sighed dramatically. "I'm just saying, other people make it work. Maybe you're too comfortable." I felt my face heat. "I work every day." "I know," she said, in a voice that sounded almost bored. "But working isn't the same as winning. Winning. Like life was a game Arbor had taught her to play. Like marriage was a ladder." "Caleb doesn't care if we're winning," I said. "He cares if we're here." Marissa's eyes flashed. "You always use him to guilt me." "I'm not using him," I said. "He's our son." She stared at the ceiling, jaw clenched. I didn't sign up for this small life. I lay there listening to the faint hum of the Arbor Home panel on the wall, and I realized with a quiet horror that it was listening too, every word, every pause, every breath that carried emotion. It was building a profile of our marriage. It was taking notes. Weeks later, Marissa started coming home with a new kind of smile, one that looked practiced. She'd put her phone down face up, like she wanted me to see it. Notifications would flash. Arbor. "Congratulations, Marissa. You qualify for Elevate Circle." Arbor. "New connections available in your area." Arbor. "Recommended. Attend High Trust Mixer, Thursday, 7 p.m. High Trust Mixer." That phrase made my skin crawl. It sounded like a party for people who'd been pre-approved as morally acceptable by a machine. "You're going to that?" I asked. "Why not?" she said lightly. "It's good for networking." "Networking for what?" "For us," she said, but her eyes slid away from mine. I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her it was creepy. I wanted to tell her I didn't want strangers with perfect smiles influencing my wife with machine-approved charm. But I didn't own her, and telling her no would make me the villain in a story Arbor was ready to write. So I watched her dress up in a new outfit and leave, leaving me with Caleb and a sinking feeling. When she came back, she smelled like expensive perfume and something else, excitement. She was energized in a way she hadn't been around me in months. It was amazing, she said, dropping her keys into a bowl. These people, they're doing things, big things. Like what? I asked, bouncing Caleb on my knee. Startups, she said. Investments. One woman has a partnership with Arbor itself. She said they're looking for aligned families for new programs. Aligned, I repeated, tasting the word. It tasted like obedience. Marissa smiled, eyes bright. It could be our chance, as if Caleb wasn't a chance, as if I wasn't a partner, as if we were a brand in need of a reboot. The next morning, I got an email from Arbor. Arbori Family Insights. We've detected patterns indicating a need for household optimization. Would you like to schedule a family alignment session? I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Arbor wasn't just listening to Marissa. It was listening to me. It was listening to my reluctance, my caution, my insistence on stability. It had decided we were a problem to be optimized. I deleted the email. Marissa noticed. You got something from Arbor, she said, leaning in the doorway, as I stood at the sink washing dishes. Her voice was casual, but her eyes were sharp. How do you know? I asked. She lifted her phone. It syncs. We're linked as a household. Of course we were. Of course Arbor had built the idea of a household as a data unit, a shared identity. Of course my choices affected hers, and vice versa. What did it say? She asked. Just spam, I lied. Marissa's eyes narrowed. Ethan. I turned off the faucet, wiped my hands, and faced her. What? Why are you fighting this? She demanded. Everyone uses it. Everyone. It's the system now. If you don't cooperate, you make us look bad. Look bad to who? I asked, voice rising. To a machine? To people, she said, exasperated. To society. To employers. To schools. I laughed once, bitter. So we're raising Caleb to be judged by a score. Marissa stepped forward, anger flaring. We're raising Caleb to have opportunities. Do you want him to struggle? Do you want him to be behind because his dad is stubborn? Stubborn. Paranoid. Those words again, landing like tags. I lowered my voice because Caleb was in the other room. I want him to grow up free. Marissa's eyes softened for a second, and I thought, maybe she'll understand. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Her face changed, like a switch flipped. Arbor says, she began, and then she stopped, as if realizing how absurd it sounded to cite a system in the middle of a fight like it was scripture. What does Arbor say? I asked. Marissa swallowed. It says households with non-compliant resistance patterns face increased risk of intervention. The word intervention hung between us. We both knew what it meant. It meant audits. It meant home visits. It meant a social worker with a tablet scanning your face while your child watched. I felt my throat tighten. So now, it's a threat. Marissa shook her head quickly. No, it's not a threat. It's a warning. That's what threats call themselves, I said. That was the first time I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. Not about losing me, about losing status, about being flagged. And that's when I understood. Arbor didn't have to make her cruel. It just had to make her afraid. From there, the slope got steeper. Marissa started blaming me for everything that felt smaller than her dreams. When Caleb woke up sick one night and cried for her, she sighed like it was an inconvenience. I'm exhausted, she said, turning over. I'll get him, I said, already moving. When the daycare sent home a note about a parent score update requirement, she shoved it at me. You need to handle this. Your score is dragging us down. My score, I repeated. Yes, she said, sharp. Arbor tracks contributions. You're not engaging enough. You don't post. You don't attend the community events. You don't do the check-ins. Because I'm working, I said. Because I'm parenting. Because I don't want to film our lives. Marissa scoffed. It's not filming. It's transparency. Transparency. The word everyone uses when they mean surveillance. Then one night, after Caleb had gone to bed, Marissa sat across from me at the table, with her phone placed carefully beside her, like backup. We need to talk, she said. Her tone was too calm, too rehearsed. I felt the floor drop out under me. Okay, she folded her hands. I want a divorce. For a second, I couldn't process it. The words didn't fit in my mouth. A divorce, I echoed. Marissa nodded, eyes steady. I can't do this anymore. My heart hammered. Do what? Be a family? Be stuck, she corrected. Be small. I stared at her, searching for the woman who cried when Caleb held her finger. Marissa, we can work on this. She shook her head. I've tried. Tried what? I demanded, voice cracking. Scrolling your way out of your life. Her eyes flashed. Don't. I took a breath, forced myself to calm down. Okay, fine. If you're serious, we'll talk about it like adults. But Caleb, Marissa's expression cooled. I don't want full custody. The words were so blunt I almost laughed from shock. You don't want Marissa. He's your son. She looked away for the first time. I'm not built for this, not alone, and I'm not going to ruin my chances. Single mothers get judged. Single fathers don't? I asked, incredulous. Marissa's lips pressed together. You can keep him. You're good at the day-to-day. The day-to-day. Like Caleb was a pile of laundry. I felt something inside me split open. Not rage yet, but grief so heavy it made my arms feel weak. You're giving up your child? I said quietly. Marissa flinched. Don't make it sound like that. What else is it? She reached for her phone, thumb hovering. I'm not giving up. I'm choosing a different life. Then choose it, I said, voice shaking. But don't pretend it's anything but abandoning him. Marissa's eyes hardened. Fine, if we're being blunt, I want the house, the car, half of your business, most of the savings. I deserve compensation for the years I invested. Invested. Like marriage was a stock. I stared at her, disbelief turning into a slow burn. You don't want the responsibility, but you want the payout. Marissa lifted her chin. I'm entitled to it. I wanted to argue. I wanted to fight. I wanted to say no and draw a line and refuse to let her take the foundation out from under us. But then my phone buzzed, face down on the table. I didn't pick it up. But I didn't have to. I knew what it would say. Civiclins, elevated conflict detected. Civiclins, reminder, domestic stability, impacts family services eligibility. It was listening. I pictured a future where Marissa fought for custody, not because she wanted Caleb, but because Arbor's system would reward her for it. I pictured months of court hearings with AI-generated risk assessments. I pictured Caleb being evaluated like a product, facial emotion scans, attachment scoring, teacher reports fed into a model that would decide which parent was optimal. I pictured losing him, and I realized something ugly and clear. In a world run by systems like Arbor, the truth isn't what matters. The data narrative matters. If Marissa decided to weaponize Arbor against me, she could. She had the social circle. She had the engagement. She had the compliance profile. She'd been building it for months. She could paint me as unstable, resistant, unsafe. I could spend all my money fighting and still lose the one thing I couldn't replace. So I made a choice that didn't feel like weakness. It felt like war strategy. I looked at Marissa across the table and said, "Fine." Her eyebrows lifted. "Fine? You want the house," I said. "Take it." She blinked, as if she'd expected more resistance. "And the car." "Take it." "And the business." I swallowed. "You can have a share. I'll buy you out over time." Her eyes gleamed, and for a second she looked almost relieved. "See, this can be civilized." I leaned forward, voice low. "But I want full custody of Caleb, full legal custody, no shared decision-making, no future disputes." Marissa hesitated. "Ethan, no," I cut in, firm. "You said you don't want the responsibility. I'm giving you what you want. You give me what I need." Marissa's jaw worked. She glanced at her phone again, like she was consulting an invisible advisor. I could almost see the Arbor prompt. Accept this deal. It maximizes your lifestyle outcome. Finally, she nodded. "Fine. Full custody. You can have him." The way she said, "have him," like she was handing me a coat, made my stomach turn, but I kept my face calm. Okay. That night, after she went to bed, I sat in the dark living room, with Caleb asleep in his crib and my laptop open. The Arbor Home panel glowed faintly on the wall, watching. I didn't have the luxury of emotion. I had to be careful. I had to be precise. If Arbor was an enemy, then paperwork was my shield. I called a lawyer the next day. Not one of the flashy ones with Arbor endorsements on their website. A quiet guy named Mr. Shu, who had a plain office and the kind of eyes that had seen systems chew people up. I told him everything. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't rant. I just laid out the facts. Marissa wanted out. She wanted assets. She didn't want custody. I wanted Caleb protected. Mr. Shu listened, fingers steepled. Your instincts are right, he said. In this climate, custody fights can become algorithmic. That's what I'm afraid of, I admitted. He nodded. We can structure a settlement that gives her what she's asking for financially. And in exchange, she relinquishes parental rights, cleanly, legally, no ambiguity. My chest loosened slightly. Can it stick? Even if she changes her mind? He hesitated. Relinquishment is serious. Courts don't take it lightly, but if she agrees, and it's done properly, it's strong. Not impossible to challenge later, but strong. Do it, I said, whatever it takes. For 2 weeks, we drafted documents. We were careful with language. We anticipated future manipulation. We made sure it was unambiguous. Full legal custody to me. Mother voluntarily relinquishes rights. No future claims without extraordinary circumstances. Marissa skimmed the papers like they were terms and conditions. She asked about the payout schedule. She asked about the car title. She asked about the house deed. She didn't ask anything about Caleb. When I pointed that out once, couldn't help it, she said, irritated. Stop trying to guilt me. This is hard for me, too. Hard for her. I didn't argue. I didn't want her to reconsider. I wanted her signature. The day of court was gray and cold. The courthouse smelled like disinfectant and old paper. Caleb stayed with my sister, Naomi, who hugged me tightly before I left. Are you sure about this? She asked, worry etched into her face. Giving her so much? I'm buying something, I said. What? I looked at her. Peace. Naomi nodded slowly, as if she understood that peace wasn't cheap. Marissa arrived, wearing a fitted coat and heels that clicked on the tile like she wanted everyone to hear her. She looked polished, prepared, like this was a business meeting, not the dismantling of a family. In the courtroom, everything felt smaller than I expected. A judge behind a bench, a few rows of seats, a clerk, our lawyers. Marissa's lawyer, young, sharp, with a tablet open in front of him like a shield. And there it was. The Arbor influence, hovering even if it wasn't visible. The courtroom had a small camera mounted near the ceiling with a discreet Arbor logo beside it. For security, they said, for transparency. I wondered how many lives had been decided under that lens. The judge reviewed the settlement. He asked questions in a careful, measured voice. Mrs. Caldwell, he said, do you understand that by signing this agreement, you are relinquishing your parental rights? Marissa's smile faltered for just a moment. Her eyes flicked toward me, then away. Yes, she said. Do you understand that this is permanent in effect? Yes, Marissa repeated, voice a fraction tighter. Do you do so voluntarily? She took a breath. Yes. The judge looked at me. Mr. Caldwell, do you understand your responsibilities under this agreement? Yes, I said, throat tight. I do. And then the papers were signed. The clerk stamped them, the judge finalized it, it was done. Marissa's shoulders relaxed as if a weight had lifted. She looked at her lawyer and smiled, triumphant. She glanced at me, and for a second I saw something like pity in her eyes, as if she believed she'd won, and I hadn't understood the game. I wanted to tell her she was right about one thing. She had won money, but she had traded something she didn't understand the value of. Outside the courthouse, the cold air hit my face. I stood on the steps for a moment, breathing, letting the reality settle. My hands shook, not from fear now, but from the delayed impact of everything I'd been holding in. Mr. Shu stepped beside me. You did the right thing, he said quietly. I don't feel like I did, I admitted. He glanced at me. You will. When you see him grow up without this hovering over his head. I nodded, but my eyes kept drifting to the street, where a digital billboard rotated through ads. Arbor was on it, of course. Auror, a safer tomorrow, starts with trust, Trust, the word that always made me want to spit. Because here's what Arbor really did. What it always did. It took normal human weakness, vanity, fear, hunger for more, and it amplified it. It didn't force Marissa to leave. It didn't put the words in her mouth. It simply built a world where leaving felt like leveling up, and staying felt like failure. It handed her a script, and she read it. After the divorce, my life became smaller and richer at the same time. I moved into this little house on the edge of town. 2 bedrooms, a tiny yard, a porch that creaks when you step on the third board. I rented it from an older couple who didn't care about Arbor verification as long as the check cleared. I paid them through a regular bank transfer, not Arbor Pay, and that alone felt like a rebellion. My business took a hit. Marissa's settlement carved off chunks I'd worked years to build. I sold my nicer tools and kept the essentials. I stopped dreaming about expansion and focused on survival. And then, slowly, survival turned into routine. I learned how to braid Caleb's hair when he decided he wanted it long, like a superhero's. I learned the exact way he liked his grilled cheese, golden, but not crunchy. I learned how to make his laugh come back after a nightmare with nothing but a flashlight and a silly voice. We built traditions that didn't require money. Friday night pancakes for dinner, Saturday morning library trips, Sunday walks in the park where we'd throw bread to ducks, and Caleb would narrate their lives like they were characters in a story. Marissa, meanwhile, posted photos. I didn't see them often because I stopped following her, but people would mention them. Naomi would roll her eyes and say, "She's living like a brand." Marissa moved into a stylish apartment downtown, the kind with clean lines and a lobby that smelled like expensive air freshener. She got a job through someone she met at an arbor mixer, something in community engagement that sounded like she was paid to smile at the system that had eaten her marriage. At first, she seemed euphoric. She'd text occasionally, not about Caleb, but about logistics, about the business payout, about paperwork. Then months passed. The texts slowed. One evening, nearly a year after the divorce, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was Marissa. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time. Caleb was at the table drawing a picture of a dinosaur wearing a firefighter hat. The kettle was whistling. Life was quiet. I typed back, "About what?" A pause. Then, "Caleb." My stomach tightened. I didn't reply right away. I watched Caleb carefully, the way his tongue peeked out between his teeth when he concentrated, the way his eyebrows pinched. This kid had been through enough. He didn't need chaos. Finally, I wrote, "You relinquished your rights. There's nothing to talk about." The response came fast. "I know. I didn't realize. I didn't understand what I was signing." I almost laughed, but it wasn't funny. I thought of the courtroom, the judge's questions, her calm, "Yes." I thought of how she skimmed the papers like they were an app update. I typed, "You understood the house deed just fine." No response for several minutes. Then, "I miss him." The word sat on my screen, fragile, and maybe true, and for a split second, a softer part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to help, wanted to stitch something back together, for Caleb's sake. Then another notification slid down from Civic Lens. Uninvited as always. Civic Lens, relationship inquiry detected. Civic Lens, reminder, unauthorized contact with relinquished parties may impact custody stability assessment. My blood went cold. It wasn't just listening to my calls. It was reading my texts. It was interpreting them. It was ready to punish me for letting her back into our orbit. I stared at the Civic Lens notification until it blurred. That was when my revenge stopped being theoretical, because up until then, my revenge had been quiet, living well without her, raising Caleb with love while she chased status. That was a kind of victory, but it was passive. It left Arbor untouched. It let the system keep operating, keep measuring, keep nudging people into turning their lives into data. But Civic Lens threatening my custody because of a text message was different. That wasn't influence. That was a choke collar. I needed to do something that mattered, not violent, not dramatic, not the kind of revenge you see in movies, the kind that destroys a machine's power, exposure. I'd spent enough time watching Arbor to understand its weakness. It wasn't the code. It wasn't the cameras. It was the illusion that it was neutral. Arbor thrived because people believed it was a referee, not a player. A safety net, not a net to catch you. So I began collecting proof. I did it slowly, carefully, like a man dismantling a bomb with kitchen tools. I started with my own data. Every Civic Lens notification, every parent score update, every time Arbor Pay locked me out, every time Arbor Home suggested something that sounded like a threat. I documented the timing, when arguments happened, when warnings followed. I compared notes with other single parents in quiet conversations at the park and outside school events. Once, a dad named Luis, eyes tired, voice low, told me, "They flagged me as emotionally volatile because I raised my voice when the school lost my kid's lunchbox." A lunchbox, I repeated. He nodded grimly. My parent score dropped. I had to attend a stability workshop to get it back. A mom named Erica whispered, "They denied me subsidized daycare because my community sentiment was low. I don't post. I don't do the engagement. I just work." The pattern was obvious. Arbor rewarded people who performed compliance. It punished people who lived privately. It wasn't about safety. It was about shaping behavior. The more I collected, the more I saw how Arbor acted like an abusive partner. Always watching, always concerned, always ready to withdraw resources if you didn't behave. I needed a way to bring this to light without putting a target on Caleb's back. So I went old school. I reached out to a local journalist I'd met years ago when I'd done some repair work on her porch. Her name was Dana Whitaker. She had the kind of mind that didn't accept official narratives just because they were convenient. I didn't email her from my normal account. I didn't text. I wrote a letter and mailed it from a drop box across town like I was living in a spy novel. It felt ridiculous, but paranoia wasn't paranoia if the system really was watching. In the letter, I didn't rant about AI as evil. I laid out facts, dates, screenshots printed on paper, stories from parents with names redacted. I ended with one line: "If Arbor is truly about safety, it should survive daylight." Dana called me from an unlisted number 2 days later. "I got your letter," she said, voice steady. "Tell me you're not messing with me." "I'm not," I said. A pause. "Meet me," she said. No phones. We met at a diner off the highway. The kind with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tastes like burnt hope. I left my phone at home, powered off. Dana did the same. We sat across from each other like conspirators. I handed her a folder thick with paper. She flipped through it, her expression tightening with each page. "This is a lot," she murmured. "It's my life," I said. "It's my kid's life." Dana looked up. "Why you?" I swallowed. "Because I'm already branded. I'm already flagged. And because I'm tired of pretending this is normal." She leaned back, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "If I publish something, they'll come after you." "They're already coming," I said. "They just do it politely." Dana nodded slowly. "Okay, we do this right. We verify. We protect sources. We make it airtight." I exhaled shakily. "Thank you." She held my gaze. "This isn't charity. This is journalism. And I don't like bullies, even the ones with friendly voices." Over the next months, Dana worked like a surgeon. She interviewed parents. She filed public records requests. She found whistleblowers, former Arbor contractors who spoke in careful, frightened sentences about behavior-shaping models, and risk scoring, and soft enforcement protocols. One guy, face hidden in shadow, in Dana's recorded interview, said, "They call it gentle friction. They don't arrest you, they just make your life harder until you comply." Gentle friction, like sandpaper was gentle because it didn't draw blood. Dana built a story that couldn't be dismissed as conspiracy. She showed how parent score correlated with Arbor platform use. She showed internal training documents that instructed agents on how to nudge resistant households. She showed the financial incentives, schools, and landlords getting kickbacks for high adoption rates. When Dana's first article went live, published through an independent outlet that still had teeth, it hit like a rock through glass. The headline wasn't dramatic. It was clinical, which made it worse. "Inside Arbor's family scoring system, how safety became behavioral control." The piece went viral anyway. People shared it because it named something they'd felt but couldn't articulate, that the world had been quietly rewired and they'd been told it was for their own good. Arbor responded the way powerful systems always do, with calm denial. Arbor's statement: Arbor is committed to privacy, safety, and community well-being. Parent Score is an optional tool designed to connect families with resources. Any claims of coercion are misinformation. Optional. The word was a lie, so polished it gleamed. But Dana's article had receipts, screenshots, contracts, interviews, data. More articles followed. Other journalists picked up the thread. Politicians who'd smiled beside Arbor logos began to distance themselves, suddenly concerned. A state committee announced an investigation. For the first time in years, the system stuttered. And when systems stutter, people like me can breathe. I wish I could tell you Arbor collapsed overnight. It didn't. Power doesn't vanish because of one story. But something shifted in the culture. Parents started asking questions at school board meetings. Landlords got nervous about relying too heavily on a score that now looked like discrimination by another name. A few local businesses stopped offering Arbor Pay-only discounts because they didn't want to be on the wrong side of public opinion. Civic Lens notifications became less aggressive. Parent Score updates came with new appeal options. The language softened, which was another kind of manipulation, but it mattered. It meant Arbor realized it had to pretend harder. And in my personal life, where revenge is measured not in headlines, but in quiet moments, something even more satisfying happened. Marissa showed up at my door. It was a Saturday afternoon. Caleb was in the backyard chasing a bubble wand I'd bought at the dollar store. The air smelled like grass and sunlight. I was on the porch, fixing a loose railing, when I heard heels on the walkway. I looked up, and there she was. Marissa stood at the bottom of the steps, wearing a coat that looked expensive but hung on her like it didn't belong anymore. Her hair was done, her makeup perfect, but her eyes were tired in a way no filter could hide. "Hi," she said. I didn't move. I kept my hands on the railing, knuckles white. "What do you want?" Marissa swallowed. "I saw the articles." I said nothing. She took a step closer. "I didn't know it was like that. I didn't know how much it was pushing me." I let out a short, humorless breath. "You didn't know you were choosing money over your kid." Her face flinched as if I'd slapped her. "Ethan, please." Caleb's laughter floated from the backyard. I glanced toward him instinctively, protective. Marissa followed my gaze, and something in her expression cracked. "He's so big," she whispered. "He's happy," I said. She nodded, tears shining but not falling, like she was holding herself together by force. I thought I'd feel free. I thought the bigger life would." She stopped, voice breaking. "It's empty." I stared at her, and a strange calm settled over me. Not forgiveness, not hatred, just clarity. "You wanted the big life," I said quietly. "You got it." Marissa's shoulders sagged. "I thought I could come back." I shook my head. "You didn't leave a job, Marissa. You left a child." Her tears finally fell, silent. She wiped them quickly, embarrassed. "I made a mistake." I could have taken pleasure in it right then, in the way her perfect life armor had cracked. I could have leaned into cruelty. But revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's just the truth spoken clearly. "You did," I said, "and I'm not going to let that mistake become Caleb's burden." Marissa looked up, desperate. "Can I at least see him? Talk to him?" My chest tightened. Not because I wanted to say yes, but because I imagined Caleb's face if I said no without explanation. I imagined him asking questions I couldn't answer without staining his childhood. I took a breath. "Legally, you can't. You signed that away." Marissa's lips trembled. I didn't understand. "You understood enough," I said. "You just didn't care enough to slow down." She flinched again, like each sentence was another cut. Behind her, a car rolled past on the street. Its windshield flashed with a tiny Arbor sticker. Still everywhere. Still trying. Marissa looked down. "I'm not asking for money," she said softly. "I'm not asking for the house back or—" "Good," I said. She nodded, shame washing over her features. I want to not be a stranger to him. I stared at her for a long moment. Then I said, "Write him a letter." Marissa blinked. "A letter. A real one," I said. "Paper, pen, no posting, no screenshots, no content, just words." Her mouth opened, then closed. "Okay," she whispered. "If I decide it's appropriate," I added, "I'll give it to him when he's older, when he can understand without it tearing him apart." Marissa nodded, tears still sliding. "Thank you." "It's not for you," I said. Marissa's face crumpled, but she didn't argue. She turned and walked away slowly, heels clicking softer than they had when she left the courthouse triumphant. I watched her go, and I didn't feel victorious in the way movies promise. I felt resolved, because the revenge I'd wanted wasn't her suffering. It was her clarity. It was the system's mask slipping enough that she could finally see what she'd sold. After she left, I went into the backyard, where Caleb was still chasing bubbles, his cheeks flushed, his laughter loud. He looked up when he saw me and grinned. "Dad," he said, breathless, "look, I made a giant one." He dipped the wand and swung it, and a shimmering bubble floated up, catching sunlight in a rainbow skin. It drifted over the fence like a tiny planet. I crouched beside him. "That's a good one," I said, and I meant it. Caleb squinted at the sky. "Do you think it'll pop?" "Probably," I said. He frowned, thoughtful. "That's sad." "It's okay," I told him. "Some things are meant to be temporary." Caleb considered that, then nodded solemnly, like he'd been given a secret. We played until the sun started to soften and the air cooled. Later, we made dinner together. Simple pasta, sauce from a jar, grated cheese that Caleb insisted on sprinkling like snow. We ate at the scarred table, and he told me about school and how his friend Jonah said robots could be teachers someday. "What do you think?" Caleb asked, twirling noodles. I wiped sauce from my chin and chose my words carefully. "I think machines can help with some things," I said, "but they shouldn't run people's lives." Caleb nodded, accepting it like a basic rule, like don't touch the stove. After dinner, we went for a walk to the park. The sidewalk was cracked in places, weeds poking through. The world wasn't perfect. It never had been, but it was real. At the park, Caleb ran toward the swings. I pushed him gently, his legs pumping, his laughter rising higher with each swing. The sky was streaked pink and orange, and the trees stood like quiet witnesses. A couple on a bench nearby were scrolling on their phones, faces lit by screens. Across the street, an Arbor billboard glowed, with its usual promise of safety and trust. But I noticed something different this time. Someone had taped a handwritten sign to the pole beneath it, "Stop scoring families." It wasn't official, it wasn't polished, it was just paper and anger and truth. I felt my throat tighten again, but this time it wasn't grief. It was something like hope, sharp and stubborn. Caleb jumped off the swing and ran back to me, grabbing my hand. His palm was warm, solid. "Dad," he said, "can we get ice cream?" I laughed, the sound surprising me. "Yeah," I said. "We can get ice cream." We walked toward the little corner shop, hand in hand. Caleb skipped, tugging me along. The evening air smelled like cut grass and summer. And as we went, I thought about everything I'd lost. Money, comfort, the illusion of a simple future. I thought about everything I'd gained. Mornings with Caleb, nights without shouting. A home where love wasn't measured by an algorithm. Marissa had taken the house and the car and the savings like trophies. But I had taken something back from both her and Arbor. The one thing they couldn't quantify. A real life. I squeezed Caleb's hand, and he squeezed back without thinking, because to him, love wasn't a score. It was just what you did. You can lose money and earn it back. Lose your child, and you lose everything.